As I said, we have a quorum, and so let's go to it. Call this meeting to order at 7:34 p.m. This is a work session. We are operating under Robert's rules, but it's much more informal evening than our legislative meetings. I have a new arrangement of my monitors, so I look like I'm looking in odd directions. It's because I'm not used to having them this way. So we'll see how it goes. Members of the council, you have an agenda before you. Are any changes required to that agenda?
No changes for me.
So we have a request, and we have in attendance Michael Herman, and he has owners of restaurants. Some material was in the packet. They're interested in presenting their restaurant ideas. This is in Ward 1, Councilmember Smith's district. And I would suggest that we add it as a discussion item between 4 and 5. Is that acceptable to everyone?
That works.
Okay, Councilmember Smith, were you able to review the material?
No, I'm looking in my email now and not sure I have it.
Okay, it was submitted with the packet material, so it should
It's
be
in the Dropbox.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Then I should have it. I'll find it.
Okay. So let's go with that, and with that, let's go ahead and does anyone have any conflicts of interest for any agenda items before we go any further? I'll take silence, and I see no microphones opening up as being a no. And so let's go ahead. Let's dive into first presentation. Riverdale Park Ethics Commission Chair, Andrea Huberty. Andrea, please go ahead.
There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm glad nobody had any conflicts of interest for the Ethics Commission. So just a couple of points. It's less of a presentation and more of just a discussion or communication. So if you don't know already, March is Ethics Awareness Month. It is the opportunity for every organization to think about how they're doing their business and finding ways to ethically do it better. And I know that the Ethics Commission in particular has been really supported by the mayor and the town council over many years. And we appreciate that support and the integrity that each of you bring to the town in your positions. And I just wanted to make a plug for completing your financial disclosures. The biggest part of being on the ethics committee is reviewing everybody's both regular calendar year as well as election financial disclosure documents. And I'm going to check with Jessica. I believe that these are all due on April 30th. They were sent to you this month. And I also have already lost it in my email. So please take a moment to find your financial disclosure statements or disclosure forms, fill them out as best you can, and submit them prior to April 30th. So the Ethics Commission appreciates your efficiency on this, and as well as your attention to this matter. So, and that is all I have, Mr. Mayor. Are there any questions?
Well, I have one, but I'll let the council go first if they would like to ask questions. Any questions for Chair Huberty?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Yang.
Appreciate the reminder, and just for my own clarification, the ethics form is for the year 2023, or is it sort of since the last one we did?
It's for the calendar year 2023. Yes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Any additional questions for Chair Huberty from the council? Any questions from members of the public for Chair Huberty? Well, I will just say that I very much appreciate the diligence and the patience of the Ethics Commission and going over our documents. And as I ask every year, as you know, from reviewing my forms in the past, I have a lot of individual investments. And so I have software that fills out the form. What is that form? C or D? I can't remember whether it's C or D or it's a numbered one, but it's the one that that specifies that. And so has the format of that changed at all from last year?
No, it has not. As I side eye Jessica, it has not. So that is all the same. So your software should be able to populate that just like it did last year.
Fantastic. I've always thought about just submitting my spreadsheet that I use to feed into that. It's one page as opposed to like 15 pages, but it has all the same information, but I will fill out the forms
Okay.
as provided. And I'm glad to hear it hasn't changed and hope it won't change before next year.
We'll keep that in mind, Mr. Mayor.
I appreciate that very much. Okay, well, thank you very much for being here, and thank you again for the activities. I know that I certainly take our ethical activities very carefully. I've never been offered anything that I thought was intended as a bribe, but I sort of watch the number of crab cakes that I have at these events and make sure that I'm staying very clearly within the ethical guidelines to be on the safe side, because I'd rather not have any conflicts of interest there at all. So,
Thank you. We appreciate it, and I'm sure your body appreciates limiting the intake of the crab cakes.
it does. So my mouth misses. Usually they run out pretty quickly anyway. Not like it's and if I'm a little bit late, then yeah, they're all gone by the time I get there anyway. Okay, thank you again. Really appreciate the work of the committee.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, that brings us on the agenda to fiscal year 2024 budget updates and adjustments.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. We have Deputy Director Jones with us this evening, who's going to update the council on where we are in the current fiscal year. It's important to understand the relationship with how we finish the current fiscal year with how we start the new fiscal year. So, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, John. So yes, I am covering the fiscal 2024 year. The first column that we have on the left is the fiscal year 2024 approved budget. And then we have the fiscal year 2024 estimated actuals for the year. So we are still currently working on fiscal year 2025 budget. And as John mentioned, it's very important for us to have a clear picture of where we are in the current fiscal year. Before I begin, I'd like to also emphasize that these are estimates and they are subject to change. And in many cases, they most likely will. So here we have the top portion of the report is our operating revenue. So for local taxes, we had an approved budget amount of $7,436,671, and we have an estimated actual amount that exceeds the budget amount, $7,530,000. Licenses and permits, we have an approved budget amount of $196,930, and our estimated actual falls a bit short at $183,840. Our administrative fees, we had an approved amount of $2,950, and we have exceeded that by quite a bit with an estimate of $22,900. Fines and forfeitures, $45,500 was the approved amount, and we fell a little short there. A total of $37,000 is what we have projected. For our automated safety programs, we have an approved amount of $1,127,000. And we look to exceed that with an amount of $1,153,000. I'd like to point out that we actually had budgeted $100,000 in red light camera that we aren't getting this year. So for us to still exceed what we had budgeted puts us in a pretty good position. Our intergovernmental revenue approved amount is $164,836, with an estimated actual amount exceeding at $251,000. Reimbursements, rebates, and refunds. We had an amount of $37,000 for the approved amount, falling a little short there with $22,336. And the last is other revenues, which includes transfers and other miscellaneous items. We have an approved amount of $489,000 with an estimated actual totaling $565,000. So if we look at the total revenue amount, the approved amount, we had a total budget of $9,500,270, and our estimated actual for total revenue exceeds that amount. We have a total of $9,766,000. The second portion of the report shows the operating expenditures. Because we had a balanced budget for fiscal year 2024, of course, the revenues match the expenditures. So the first category we have is salaries and wages. We have a total of $4,440,000. And we have an estimated actual of $4,043,000. So if we look at salary, wages, and benefits as well, we do have some expected salary savings due to vacant positions that have not been filled. So that's why the salary and wages are lower than what we had approved there. For our overtime, that number actually exceeds what we had budgeted. That being because with us having some vacant positions, we've had staff have to work more. So the overtime is expected to exceed what we had there in the approved amount. It hasn't yet, but that's just where we have an estimated actual. For contractual services, we have an approved amount of $1,241,000 with an estimated actual of $1,207,000. We did see a little bit of savings there in Public Works for our residential trash pickup. The contract was less than what we had budgeted there, but we did leave a little bit of room for any potential additional trash pickups there. Also, in the police department, we had a contractual service amount budgeted for our parking enforcement program, which has not yet went into. We haven't yet started that, so we had some savings there. So for operating expenditures and other operating expenditures, so we have an approved amount of $1,042,000, an estimated actual with some savings of $1,002,960. Other expenditures, $239,000, and then an estimated actual of $139,000. For those two combined, we do have a contingency line item that is not expected to be expended at this point. But again, this is an estimate, and that may be subject to change, but that's where we have the majority of our savings there. Our weather response services, we have an approved amount of $28,000 with an estimated actual of $20,000. Municipal center buildings, $99,486 was the approved amount. The estimated actual, not much savings there. We expect to land at $95,650. Community grants, we had $44,200 with an estimated actual of $46,701. And last is community grants with an approved amount of $99,100 and an estimated actual total of $96,623. So if we look here, if we look at our total expenditures, we have the budgeted amount of $9,500,000 with an estimated actual that totals just $8,827,574. So we definitely have some savings here when we look at what was budgeted and what we expect to expend at the end of the year. If we look at how the revenue has exceeded the budgeted amount. This leaves us with an amount of 939,000 in revenue net expenditures. But again, I'd like to continue to point out that this number is subject to change as we are still finalizing fiscal year 2024 as we work on the fiscal year 2025 budget. So yes, that concludes the fiscal year 2024 budget update. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there questions from the council for Deputy Director Jones about these budget updates?
Mr. Mayor?
Go
What
ahead,
goes into the,
Councilmember Inyang. I think you were first. Go ahead.
oh, sorry, yeah, what goes into the intergovernmental revenue portion?
Deputy Director
Sorry, I
Jones.
was muted. Yes. So intergovernment revenues, that's where we have some grant revenues there.
Is highway user included in that, for example?
Highway user is typically below the line with our capital improvement projects. But yeah, this is typically, and I can pull it up. I have it right here.
It's going to include things such as the state police aid,
Mhm.
Yeah.
the 200 and some thousand we received there.
Okay.
And whoever's controlling the screen, can you please move to the revenue section at the top, please? Thank you. That's what it's primarily probably is, Mr. Jones. Is my
Yep, that's
recollection.
exactly what it is.
Okay. If that's enough of an answer for you, Councilmember Inyang, we can cover that more offline if you want to dig into details.
Yeah, that's fine for now. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Lingua, I see your microphone is open. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Jones, doing this roughly off the top of my head here, but first question I want to ask you, these, granted, you're saying these are estimated actuals, and you have a feeling that these numbers are going to vary between now and then. Being aware of the saying that past performance doesn't indicate future results, where in the past you've essentially come in right around 2.5% of the actual amounts in terms of expenditures and revenues over time. By what I'm seeing here off the top of my head, combining the amounts of total, the excess revenues that are estimated coming in, and the estimated expenditures, we're realizing an estimated surplus ballpark around just under $930,000. Which 2.5% of that would be roughly 22,000, 23,000. Is that correct, give or take? So we're looking at a ballpark, if it was under that, around roughly just over $900,000, or if it was on the other end, we're looking at near around $940,000. Is that correct?
I would say yes. If this estimate does stay around there, but at this point in the budget process, as we're continuing to work with numbers, I don't want you to hold us to this 940 just yet.
Like I said, it was one of my cautionaries at the front, realizing that past performance doesn't indicate future results. This is just a basic best guess estimate based on what we're seeing here and loosely applying the track record. So that's why I went with that high and low number. And even if we come within that on the low end or the high end, we're looking at a substantial amount of money. Roughly 10% of the year's budget.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond?
Please go ahead, Mr. Town Manager.
Let me lower my hand here. Good evening, Councilmember Lingua.
Evening.
So yes, that's what we're projecting now, and I think that Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones do a very fine job on our estimated actuals.
I agree.
I would point to the chart that we have in fiscal 24 budget, where we were showing the declining revenue net operating expenditures year over year for the past couple years.
Mhm.
And the audited number for fiscal 23 is right around 1.3.
Mhm.
And I think that's down from like 1.7, and that's down from 2 million. And so hitting at around 900,000 is what we anticipated last year.
Mhm.
And but what is a little concerning to me, and we pointed this out last year, is that revenue net operating expenses have continued to decline.
Mhm.
And if we slide down to the expense area here, so whoever's controlling the screen, so on the expenses,
Mhm.
we have of that 900,000, you have roughly 400,000 in vacancy savings, 100,000 in benefit savings. So you have 500,000 of that 900 that, if all positions had been filled,
Mhm.
we would be looking at 500,000 or 400,000 instead of 9,000.
Mhm.
And so it's just, it continues to be something that we watch. I know Mr. Smith, I was going to say he preaches this every time we talk, but he reminds Mr. Jones and I that we have to keep a really tight eye on this.
Agreed.
Okay, any additional council questions for Deputy Director Jones? Are there any public comments or questions for Deputy Director Jones? Okay, thank you, Deputy Director. Appreciate the report and the update. And we will move on the agenda now.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Mayor's report. I'm going to have a pretty short report this evening. First of all, just saying that that my heart goes out to the city of Baltimore, and particularly the families of those who are currently missing and presumed dead. It was quite a disaster. As one of my coworkers at my day job said today, it was sort of like the bridge got hit by an entire city block it was such a massive ship and moving so quickly, and quite a disaster. And I think those of us who occasionally go through or to Baltimore are going to be suffering the traffic backups, but read this evening that the Port of Baltimore is going to be closed for quite a while they remove the wreckage of the bridge. But all that pales for the family members of those who are missing. The other sort of topic I'll discuss is sort of some pieces of legislation. Last week was crossover, so any bills that were introduced in one chamber of the House that did not get introduced by last Monday are no longer viable, will not be considered for this term. And one of those was House Bill 1018, which was going to reduce the ability of municipal corporations to tax personal property, such as those held by businesses. And that did not make crossover, so will not be considered. Several other of the bills that we were interested in, $20 million additional money for stormwater management, did make crossover. We'll see, have to see how it fares in the other chamber during the remainder of the session. I feel like there's one other that I was going to mention, juvenile justice, various items for juvenile justice. A lot of those did not make crossover. There's one other, if I think of it, I'll bring it up later in the meeting. And finally, one other topic, there's an omnibus zoning rewrite that's making its way through. And last Friday, the one piece of that, which was extending the ability of developers to use the current zoning ordinance, was pulled out and introduced as a resolution. A proposal was to extend it for 2 years. There's a meeting today to determine the fate of that resolution, and I don't honestly know what happened, but it's possible that the applicability of the old zoning ordinance was extended by 2 years. I advocated at the Prince George's County Municipal Association Legislative Committee yesterday, and directly with Councilmember Olson to limit that to at most 1 year. Councilmember Olson was in opposition of even extending it that far. So I'll find out what happened and let people know by next week. And we are moving out of respiratory virus season, and so things are getting better. People are spending more time outdoors, and I'm glad to say that I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed myself. So hope that we can get out from underneath that topic. That concludes my report. So unless there are any questions, I will move on and let the town manager have his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and the community. On behalf of the staff team, we too extend our thoughts and our prayers for all the victims in today's tragedy and their families, and then also for the first responders and the real stress that they are under. Additionally, the staff team is working hard to finalize the proposed budget. We're confident we'll deliver this budget on April the 1st, so next Monday. We likely will not have the printed version until late in the day Monday. We'll be working through the weekend on assembly and final proofreading in that. Reminder to the community that the budget public hearings will be held on 2 different Saturdays. So that's Saturday, April the 13th and Saturday, April the 20th, both beginning at 9:30 in the morning. This Saturday, the 30th, from 1 to 3 at Riversdale House Museum is the rain date for the Easter egg hunt, or the spring egg hunt. I'm sorry. That was rained out last week. And then the last thing on my list is that the Town Seal Design Committee received 10 responses for requests for qualifications for artists. So that's pretty awesome to have that type of response. And the group is working to select up to 3 artists to move to the next round of review. So just want to thank everyone who's working on that. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Unless there are any questions for you, then we can move on to council committee and ward reports. Starting with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similarly, we'll keep it short tonight. Had a good opportunity to get away with family over this past weekend up to New Jersey to my wife's parents' house. On the way up on Friday, we left early afternoon, so we hit Baltimore around rush hour. So rather than going through downtown, of course, the GPS sent us along 695, and I guess that was the last time we'll be driving over the Key Bridge for some time. It was definitely surreal to see that news yesterday that place we had just been a few days ago experienced that kind of disaster. I don't know that as great as this town is, I don't know that we have the resources of Baltimore County. So if there's anything that we can provide, I'm sure we are. I don't know that there is, but they're definitely in our thoughts, and wishing them everything they need in recovery. I hope that as a state, we can, acknowledging the probable loss of life and everything that comes along with that. But as we recover from that, there are also opportunities there in terms of some of the limits in size of ships that could get in and out of Port of Baltimore due to the size of the Key Bridge. So I hope we don't just build that back as it was, but build it back bigger and better. And looking forward to the patience that will be required to get to realizing that as we look to recover from that as a state. So again, just thoughts with the folks in Baltimore County and everybody that has been affected by that disaster. Had some good documents come in for the Muncie Committee to consider around the Chambers funeral home site development of the mixed use project going up there. Project looks really great. We have not met as a committee about that yet, but we'll be meeting, and I'm looking forward to a good conversation there. It looks like it's going to be a really good project that the community in Ward 1 can be proud of. I think I will save the rest of my comments for legislative meetings. So that is all I have tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. I'll just add on that the submission from the project that you're talking about on the former Chambers Funeral Home site is very detailed and very long. And so I'm going to be spending a lot of time over the next week reviewing those documents before the meeting next.
It's nice to have things like that, isn't it, Mr. Mayor?
It is. It's very nice to have a detailed, complete application. Councilmember Foe had a family emergency and had to drive up to Connecticut. He's driving back right now, so he is not with us this evening. So that brings us to Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll just keep this very brief. One report that I've had from residents is the fire hydrant along the 5800 block of Riverside Drive seems to be leaking. And if that could be passed on, be that to County Fire Department or WSSC, that would be much appreciated. As well, I appreciate the efforts that staff has made on reaching out to the residents at the intersection of Nicholson, 47th, and Lafayette regarding the ongoing issues with the folks who are occupying the Shoemaker property. SGS, I believe, is the company, and trying to get things worked out in regards to a commercial entity living adjacent to a residential neighborhood. With that, I'll conclude the report.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Appreciate that. Councilmember Inyang, Ward 4.
One second. Microphone's not plugged in. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Since everyone's keeping it short, we'll join as well. I think a couple things. I think one around sort of Pepco. I know that they're in the townhomes in Riverdale Park Station, behind the homes that are north of Van Buren Street, between Rhode Island Avenue and 47th Street. There's been a electrical junction box that Pepco owns that has been broken. And I know residents have reached out to Pepco for a few months now and haven't been able to hear back. And so if it's possible, the town can sort of follow up on that would be helpful. And then I think keeping in line with Pepco as well wanted to check in again on the lights, the opportunity of putting lights on 54th Street in the Purple Line neighborhood. I know we talked about, obviously, there's absolutely no lights there, and there was talk about potentially getting lights put on those Pepco poles. I think there was like an existing sort of weekly or monthly meeting with Pepco, so was curious about the status on those as well. I've had a couple conversations with residents that were talking around the paper street for, you know, essentially the pass underneath the east-west highway connection right now from the Purple Line neighborhood to connect underneath the bridge. I know we've had conversations before where this is sort of a known thing. Park and Planning, I believe, are aware of this. I was curious if anyone had any updates on timing of it. I think there's, you know, obviously, hopefully the weather is better, but when it rains, like that main pathway is obviously like mostly dirt and a little bit of gravel, but it's mostly dirt. And so that's always obviously inconvenience. But then with the construction that's happening, that's pretty much one of the major, you know, ways in and out of that neighborhood. And so it'd be good to be able to provide some type of um, timeline, if at all possible, of when that will be sort of addressed. And then I think the last thing was just had a couple good conversations with a few businesses, specifically talked to the shed. And it actually got me thinking about more so, I think it was positive to see that people are beginning to get the newsletter that the town sends out. And I think as word gets out and word spreads, I've had multiple people reach out asking questions, and I'm like, oh, funny you say that. Please look at the town newsletter. It's actually covered here. And so I think that's obviously a positive thing. I think it would be good for us as like a town council and mayor council in town to figure out what are the rules in terms of being a part of that. If we thought about if there, you know, what type of events can be publicized there. Is it only town events? If like businesses have events they're trying to do, is that allowed? If so, what's the process? I think there's just a little clarification I think would be helpful there as well. And then I think just lastly, also just gotten a lot of I think a lot of interests of businesses interested in sort of trying to plan events and but looking for you know, asking what's resources or services the town have in terms of like supporting. Typically it's always typically in the sense of you know, hey, we would either get, you know, looking for renting tables and chairs or looking to cater an event from a local business and, you know, sort of seeing what's available there. So would love to, you know, think and brainstorm and see, is there opportunities for something a little more permanent, something where, you know, rules can sort of be created where there's an understanding of this is what's available, this is how you would apply, these are the type of things that you'd be most likely to be awarded, and this is what's sort of not in bounds. I think as I think not just community members, but also businesses, I think are as well are thinking about how can they take more ownership in terms of like programming and events within the community. And if there are ways for the town to supplement with, you know, micro grants or something like that, I think it'd be great, a worthwhile conversation to have. And with that, I'll use the rest of my time.
Thank you, Councilmember Inyang. Can staff respond to a few of these requests about the electrical and path at least?
Director Lewis. Director Lewis.
Yes, I'm signing in. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, what was the question?
So there were a couple of questions. Two of them were about Pepco issues. There's apparently a transformer north of Riverdale Park Station that is making noises. Is that correct, Councilmember?
I think it's like a floor junction box. It's like it's broken. So there's like a huge hole in the alleyway in the townhomes north of Van Buren. And that was one. And then just the lights on 54th Avenue in the Purple Line neighborhood, about putting light poles on the Pepco poles, was something that we sort of explored and talked about, and wanted to know if there's an update on that.
So putting Cobra lights on the existing poles. So
On
it's,
the electrical box, I wasn't aware of that issue and made a note to follow up with actually Mark Brigalinsky first in Riverdale Park Station, because in the past they've taken the lead on repairing some of the boxes that were vandalized. And if he's not responsible, to follow up with Pepco. We've actually put together several proposals for funding lighting and sidewalks within the Casada Quintana area. We have not yet pursued the opportunity to put lights on Pepco poles. I'll put that back on the list for consideration.
Okay. I know that the alleyways are sort of owned by the HOA, and so you can definitely reach out to Mark, but I'm sure he'll say that that's not part of their sort of property line. And so, but if he has like people who are aware or like a point of contact, I think the HOA has been trying to reach out to folks from Pepco, and they've just been unsuccessful.
So I'll make that contact. There is a municipal liaison that I think I'll start with, since the community, I guess, understands, or the HOA, that box is on their property, rather.
Correct.
And not within a public utility easement. I'll follow up in the morning.
Thank you.
and then the next one was the pathway underneath East West Highway from Patterson Street. So the town, I think, snuck in and put some gravel on a section that had been just mud previously, but MNC PPC is aware and has made a commitment to pave it at some point. Any update on that?
I've not received an update on that in several months. I could actually reach back to my point of contact with Parks on that subject.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
And then last but not least is about events and having perhaps a more formal program for businesses to be able to get small grants to assist with that. And there's a question about publicizing in the town crier. There's a whole chapter of the code on the town crier, which I haven't looked at very recently, but I think that might be a longer question than we want to discuss this evening. But your interest is noted.
Does that, you think that would apply to the newsletter as well?
So the newsletter is pretty well prescribed in the code as to what can and can't go into it. And so I would start by reviewing that, and we can go over that, Councilmember, if you'd like to have an offline discussion.
Thank you. I'll look into it.
Okay. That brings us to Ward 5. Councilmember Mejia, do you have a report this evening?
Good evening. No, I don't have no report this evening.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Kellogg, Ward 6, is observing Ramadan. He was excused from all evening meetings until Ramadan is completed, so he will not be presenting a report this evening. And that brings us on the agenda to public comments. Are there any public comments this evening?
Let's see, reactions.
Councilmember or Mr. Herman, you have go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only comment I was just going to make is I know that we had other meetings last month related to the Plaza del Alamo and some other issues, and I know that we were to discuss, or action was deferred until tonight, as I recall. I'm not sure if I spoke briefly with the town manager, and I understand that there's nothing yet in terms of reports, but I just wanted to be able to relate to my clients what the latest status is, because we were told that it would be discussed at tonight's meeting, at a previous meeting.
So we were hoping that we were going to have various reports from traffic engineers by this evening, but I believe that those have not arrived. So the council doesn't have information for moving forward on some of those topics, and but we are still collecting it. I think that there may not be, we may not have enough information to do anything even next week, but in the meantime, then construction is paused. And so that's the status report. Mr. Town Manager, do you have any additional updates?
No, sir, except that I will let the council know as soon as we receive a report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. That brings us, unless there are any additional public comments. I'll just mention that I relayed to the Sustainability Committee that I thought we were going to have tree data from MNC PPC and have a presentation on that this evening. And as it turns out, MNC PPC did not provide that, so we don't have that update, but hopefully we will get it sometime in the next couple of weeks and can have that presentation. I'm looking forward to having that data myself. So moving into the work session discussion items. Item 1, fence permit request, 6-foot wood fence at 4900 Ravenswood Road. That is Ward 2, and Councilmember Foe, as I said, was returning from dealing with a family emergency. I don't know what position he has on this. Is the applicant any applicant here this evening? Anyone representing the applicant?
Yes, Suzanne. It appears, Mr. Mayor, that the applicant is here. He may have difficulty unmuting.
Okay,
There we go.
okay. If you'd like to go ahead and present, I can't make any promises. I'll reach out to Councilmember Foe when he is back in to see how this will appear on next week's agenda, but please do let us know about the project. Please tell us about it. I can't hear you if you're speaking. It looks like your microphone is saying something that I can't. Can anyone else hear him? Is this me? Okay.
No, I can't hear anything either.
I had a little bit of sound there. Another little blip. I heard half a word.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if it's helpful to the council, Director Barnes could likely walk us through what the application is.
Okay.
And then perhaps the resident will be able to comment.
I
Okay.
think that would be appreciated.
That would be fantastic.
Director Barnes.
Certainly, my pleasure. Staff received an application for a 6-foot wooden fence at 4900 Ravenswood Road. The permit application was actually received from Michelle Clancy, the permit runner for Long Fence, on behalf of the resident who's here with us tonight. The applicant has obtained the Prince George's County permit for the project. This appears to be a rear and side fence. The existing fence is chain link. It appears to be replaced with a wooden fence. The picture, I think the second picture in the packet is probably the most clear. It's taken from the rear of the house, so you can see where the existing fence is and where the wooden fence will be placed.
Director Barnes, there's a plan view also. Can we scroll to that showing from above? So just wanted to note that the fence is to the rear of the house, and the county has some unusual definitions of rear of the house for corner properties such as this one. And this meets all of them. Our requirement is behind the building line, and this definitely meets that requirement, I believe. And just wanted to point out that where there are gates in the chain link fence, it looks like there's a gate in this one also. I had not, that's one of the reasons I wanted to look at this drawing. So that's the project. Do we, is there any information available on exactly what sort of fence this is. Is it just going to be a fairly plain? Is it going to be have alternating fence lines so that it's not a solid block, but air can flow through? Any information about posts or tops, anything like that? We get that from some applications, but it's not required. It's just we get that.
We do not have that for this application, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay, if there's any, I mean, I don't know if council has any questions that they'd like to have addressed. As I said, I'll reach out to Councilmember Foe when he returns and determine whether this goes under the consent agenda next week or whether it will need to be discussed. And that may depend on how the neighbors feel. Director Barnes, do you have any idea of whether the neighbors have been consulted and whether they have any feedback on this?
Unfortunately, I do not.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm sorry about the technical difficulties this evening. It would have been nice. Romy's here, the property owner. Mr. Azuine, are you able to speak? We can't hear from Susan.
Yes.
Mr. Azuine, I can't hear you either. You come in little blips of sound, but can't understand what you're saying. What either of you is saying.
From my
Got a little bit more there, but it was about 2/3 of a word as opposed to a third of a word. So. So we're having technical difficulties. As I said, I'll reach out with Councilmember Foe, and we will come to a conclusion on this, on where it goes on the agenda for next week. So
Mr.
thank you for the presentation. Councilmember Inyang, go ahead.
Yeah, I think if you reach out, it'd be great to hear what neighbors think. Looking on like Google Maps, it appears the neighbor on the other side of 49th Street also has a wooden 6-foot fence as well on the property. And so curious if it'll have something similar to that, and sort of what the design would look like, but it'd be good to know what the neighbors feel as well.
Okay, and the house to the north is a rental house. I think it has a 6-foot on one side, but I don't know what it is on the place where it interfaces with this property. But we'll reach out. Okay, let's move on the work session discussion items.
Hello.
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 Romy?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, it's been network issues. Are there questions you have for me?
I think there's some questions just about whether the neighbors have been consulted about this and whether they have any feedback, and also some curiosity about the design of the fence, what it's going to look like when it goes up. But
it's just gonna be a wooden fence.
So just a flat wooden fence?
Yeah, just flat wooden fence. No fashion, no design.
Okay,
and I didn't know I had to contact neighbors. So if that is the procedure, I will go ahead and contact neighbors. My neighbor on my left already have fence. It's about 6 feet. And on the other side of my property, there are no fence. So and then on the other side where there is no fence is 49th. before another property that has a fence. So which of my neighbors do I consult? Like all of them or just those that are adjacent to my property?
Just the ones adjacent to you. And I know that the property
Oh,
to
okay,
the
okay,
property
okay.
to the north of you behind you is a rental property. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure where that property owner is living right now. She was in New Hampshire for a while, but I think she's back in Greenbelt, but I'm not positive of that. But if you
Yeah,
can
Dr.
just,
Thompson,
yes.
Richard is our neighbor on the right. Richard knows, I mean, for years, he knows that we've been trying to get a fence, and I know that he's very supportive. On the left of the property is a gentleman that also put up a fence that is about the same height. And
Okay.
then Proficience, I think Proficience is the person you were talking about who left with a husband as well. I think they relocated. They have a shorter fence, but actually outside on the other side, they do have a fence. Then the new property that divided Proficient's property into two, the new development, they have a fence. And then the one that is adjacent, they also have a fence. So I think around us, I'm not sure. We're happy to consult with more people. Maybe Doug McErrat, who lives opposite of us. Newt has fence, right? And then the other couple, Lisa and the husband, they also have fence. And so I'm sure almost everybody in our neighborhood, they have
No,
fences. We're the only ones that do not have fence.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's going to be an issue, but we do generally try to reach out and make sure that everyone at least knows it's coming. And so that's where we are.
We'll do that. Yeah.
Okay. One other question. This is actually in our code is very often there's a finished and an unfinished side of the fence. So whether it has sort of cross beams, and is the finished side going to be out at least towards 49th?
The fence is gonna be like all around, including on the other side being made by other houses.
Okay, I was only
You
getting
know what
about
I'm
every
saying?
other word. If you could try again.
Sorry, so we have the
okay.
left side of the property, there is already a fence.
Yes.
And then so we are only doing three sides of our own. So the one on the road on 49th, that will be fenced. And then the one that is with Proficience, that will be fenced. There wouldn't be any side of, that will not be done by the
Yeah,
time
I
we
understand.
finish.
So each section of fence has a finished and an unfinished side. So the unfinished side typically has the posts on it and has cross beams, and the finished side is just the flat boards. And so the only question is just whether the finished side, the flat side, is facing towards the street, towards your neighbors, or whether it's facing towards the yard of your house. And I
think that's a technical question we're going to find out from Long Fence. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will be reaching out to clarify some of these questions over the week ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any additional council questions? Any public comments or questions? Okay, let's move on to the next discussion item, fiscal year 2024 revenue update. Is this in addition to the budget update previously?
It is, Mr. Mayor. This is the regular monthly report. Deputy Director Jones.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Town Manager. So yeah, the last report covered where we expect to be at the end of the year, and this one will cover up from where we are up to March 22nd, and then compare the 3 previous fiscal years. So the first, and we have 5 major revenue categories, the first being local taxes. So the total that we have for fiscal year 2024 is $6,703,701. We look at the previous fiscal years, we have exceeded those amounts in this particular category. The real estate taxes, we're currently at 91% of what we had budgeted, and we still expect the money to flow back to the town. So we do expect that number to be higher and reach the estimated actual number that we had in the previous the previous report. The next major category is the licenses and permits. The total we have here is 158,693, which is lower than the previous fiscal years. Last year being the highest at 214,000. But currently, we're at 81% of what was budgeted, and this lower amount was expected. The majority of it coming from the multifamily rental licenses. We're actually at 97% of our budgeted revenue, even though we are down significantly from fiscal year 2023. So while these numbers are a little bit lower than the previous fiscal years, this was expected. And we do expect to reach the estimated actuals that we had in the previous report. The next major category is administrative fees. This covers abatement charges and municipal infractions. Again, our neighborhood service team is doing a great job of ensuring that the town code is upheld. So we do have a number there of 22,250, which is down a little bit from the previous fiscal year. But again, these are municipal infractions, so we would prefer for these numbers not to be high. The next major category is fines and forfeitures, which includes police reports, vehicle impounds, and parking citations. For the current fiscal year, we have a total of 28,195, which is down a little bit from the previous fiscal year. We had a total of 33,530. And the last major category is community safety programs. And this is where we house our speed camera revenue. So the total that we have for this particular category is $798,085. This is one of the revenue sources that we continue to monitor very closely. As you can see, we are down from last year. The total was 951,000. And then the year before, at this point in the fiscal year, we had a total of 1,028,000 there. So again, for this line item, we're continuing to monitor this. When we did do the budget last year, we were conservative with our budgeted speed camera revenue. Again, this is a very unreliable revenue source. So while we are down from the last 2 years, us being conservative was a good thing, as we are currently at 77% of what we had budgeted for the year. This speed camera revenue is booked 2 months behind. So with us being at 77%, we still have roughly 5 months left of speed camera revenue to receive. We do expect to hit to actually exceed what we had budgeted, that amount being 1,025,000. So if we look at the total revenue in this report, we're currently at 7,710,000. The previous fiscal year, that total was 7,789,000. The year before that, 7,905,000, and then fiscal year 2021, 7,382,000. So if we look at the revenue in comparison, we at the current place, lower than the 2 previous fiscal years. As Mr. Town Manager mentioned, our revenue, while it still outpaces what we had budgeted, the trend for revenue is moving at a downward position, and we do expect that the revenue to net expenditures to also follow that downward trend. So as we continue to move throughout the year, we are confident in where we will be, but we are monitoring the fact that our revenue net expenditures is declining, at least based on the 2 previous years. And this was reflected in the previous report tonight, where I presented the estimated actuals. So yeah, that concludes the revenue report. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there council questions for Deputy Director? I will, I'll just mention that, I have to imagine that the Purple Line construction is impacting the safe speed for students, and because I know the traffic through there is slowing things down. And as we always say, we're happy to have people obeying the speed limit, although obeying the speed limit because they're stuck in a traffic jam is not necessarily the best way to have that happen. Rather, that they were having a smooth travel through town, but obeying the speed limits. Are there any public comments on the fiscal 24 revenue update? Okay, thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Let's move on to work session discussion item 3, request for proposals for on-call construction services for road improvement projects.
Good evening. Sure. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. No action is required on this item this evening. Instead, this is a briefing on the solicitation to hire one or more contractors to provide on-call road improvement services for a period of 5 years. Staff released a request for proposal for on-call construction services on February 15th. And the scope of work included repair and resurfacing of town roads, the installation of road markings and traffic signs in large quantities. An example would be to install permit parking signs in a new neighborhood participating in the town's permit parking program, or installing multiple thermoplastic continental crosswalks in a section of town, or multiple locations in town over a period of time. Otherwise, DPW staff will continue to work on those small installation projects on road marking and traffic signs. Also included in the scope is the installation of raised crosswalks and intersections, speed humps, curb ramps, and bike lanes. These might be some of the quick build projects under the Safe Streets for All or projects in our annual Streets and Sidewalk CIP project. Also, the construction, reconstruction, and repair of sidewalks and curb and gutters, and the reconstruction of town-owned storm inlets and the installation of new stormwater infrastructure. 5 companies submitted a proposal by the due date. Staff and project engineers are reviewing each proposal, taking into account experience, capacity, and cost. We are currently also conducting reference checks on the top 3 companies and expect to make a selection or selections this week. At the April 1st legislative meeting, staff will seek mayor and council authorization for the town manager to sign a contract with the selected company or companies for this service. And with that, I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Are there council questions for Director Lewis?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Indian, go ahead.
I appreciate the readout. Is this a new approach that we're sort of using, sort of this like combined all-in kind of contract to manage all these services? I'm curious about sort of how we got like the decision process. Is this business as usual, or is this a new approach that we're taking, sort of handling the combined set of scope for work for these things?
What's new is that we are seeking an on-call contractor to carry out this work, whatever it is, over the next 5 years, 4 or 5 years. In the past, for each project, we go out and do a separate solicitation that eats up staff time, and we don't always get good proposals. So this is the first effort to bring on an on-call construction company for road projects. We actually have good experience with our on-call engineers whose contracts we entered into almost 5 years ago. In fact, those contracts are going to expire later on this year, and I certainly anticipate going back out to solicit on-call engineering services. It's just a more efficient way to have these resources on hand for the number of projects that we do year to year.
And and Director Lewis, if you can verify this, and if we have larger projects, we would solicit bids from the on-call engineers from more than one. for larger projects. The same as we do with our on-call engineers. But this really will help quick turnaround in handling a lot of the things that pop up in addition to the planned work.
That's why we are considering more than one contractor. And that sort of evolved as we've gone through this process. And we have some good proposals.
So the bid process for larger projects would still would seek to have all three. If we had three, for instance, that were on call, we'd ask all three to submit a bid for those projects.
Yes.
And do you have any thoughts on where the borderline between small and large projects would be?
No, we don't at this point. I mean, I can make some comparisons with projects already in the queue, like the town center versus a sidewalk project or an infill sidewalk project. Certainly the town center project would benefit from having competing proposals from the on-call contractors.
Okay. Additional council comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Okay, I think this is an exciting new way to look at making this process more efficient, and I look forward to seeing what the submissions were next week. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, discussion item 4, review of diversity and inclusion statement.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. Several months ago, we started a process of reviewing the vision and commitment statements, which were adopted starting in 2017. And that process is winding down. One of our final pieces to review is the current diversity and inclusion statement, which is what on the screen right at the moment. So staff are seeking feedback from the council on any sort of revisions or changes, amendments they'd like to see to the current diversity and inclusion statement.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Council, thoughts? Very quiet council this evening. It's unusual. Has there been any thought to including equity in this statement? I'll just throw that out as a way to spark discussion, perhaps. Any thoughts from staff on that? You considered it?
If I can
Please
weigh in. So I believe Councilmember Inyang had brought up having equity captured within this aspirational statement and policy statement. And staff fully would support that. And I believe as we look at our Walk, Bike, Drive initiative, we recently added, I believe we added equity there as well as evaluation. And so from a staff perspective, we think that's important. I will, as an observation, say I believe that the mayor and council have directed staff in many ways to ensure equity in where we have our capital projects and how we deliver our services, how we communicate with a diverse population. Those things are happening. So from a staff perspective, we would say it would be appropriate to capture it here as well.
Okay, well, I reviewed the diversity and inclusion and think that they're great. And so I would ask that staff add a statement on equity and bring it back. Councilmember Inyang, did you want to add something?
Town manager hit the points I was going to make. I was looking forward because I know we talked about it a couple months ago, and it's been a while. Yeah, I think for the point stated, it sort of touches on we're living these values, which is a positive. I think it's just we should have it reflected in our vision statement as much as possible.
Okay, very good. Any additional council comments? Thoughts? Any public comments or thoughts? Questions? Okay. With that, we will move on to Mr. Herman and the restaurant item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I hope you can hear me. I'm sitting a little bit further away from the screen because, and I hope that you can see our team that's here. To my immediate left is Patrick Kamgang. Kamgang, he's one of the co-owners. Immediately to my right is Dr. Blanche Mokoso. And behind me, is Mel Amin, who is married to Dr. Mokoso, but is also been integrally involved in this project. You have a team approach here. We wanted to tell you a little bit about why we're here. We had requested a meeting to appear for really two purposes. One was to introduce you to the Map Grill House, which is going to be the newest restaurant offering in Riverdale Park. You'll notice that it's in the spot where Geppetto's Catering used to be located, and that vacant space has been, ready for adaptive reuse for a considerable period. And now, of course, having a catering kitchen in there expands the opportunities for Map Grill House. Where the one of the principal catering kitchens is where the takeout is. As you're looking at the buildings, that's the building to the left, but the building to the right, the one closest to the gas station, is going to be where the restaurant is located. We attached to the submission to you the site plan and basically the restaurant configuration, so you can see how the restaurant sets up. But and the menu, which is an American bistro. Thank you. That's good. And if you're looking at it from the furthest right, just in front of the building, there is really where Queensbury is located. And the restaurant then goes toward the back, and there'll be some outdoor seating right up front that will be closest to the street. And then that's only going to be seasonal indoor dining. And there's going to be a discussion at some point of expanding outdoor dining to between the two buildings behind the fence there, which would make it a lovely patio or something out there for an al fresco experience. They have very ambitious plans, but right now is to get started with the takeout to the left, which is happening very quickly, and then getting the restaurant open. The main reason, or one of the reasons for coming, not only to introduce you to the team, was also that we will be applying for a liquor license, beer, wine, liquor. As you know, the process is there are several locations in the town of Riverdale Park that are in special locations, special receiving zones. And as a result, people don't have a competitive process for the beer, wine, liquor license. However, we are not in one of those designated zones. What that means is that when we go before the Board of License Commissioners, we are competing with every other potential establishment in Prince George's County for the various liquor licenses that could be made available. Historically, the Liquor Board gives licenses 4 times a year for those licenses that are in the competitive process. And generally no more than 3 licenses are given out at any meeting. So we anticipate that there may be competition for this, and we wanted to see if the goal here is to see if we could get letter of support from the town of Riverdale Park. It may be an unusual request that maybe the town doesn't get very often, but when you had Riverdale Park Station and other places that had special receiving zones, they didn't have to go through a competitive process to get the beer, wine, liquor licenses. That's why many of them probably bypassed and didn't have to go through this. They probably met with the MUTC committee or whatever to talk what they were doing, but they didn't have to come before you, I believe, on the liquor licenses. So that is the main reason we're here, to introduce ourselves. The hours of operation will be quite reasonable for a restaurant. It's not going to be a late night denizen place. It is not intended. There's not going to be, they're not applying for a entertainment permit to have, you know, late night music bands or anything like that. And they are very cognizant that they are located, while they have commercial use on one side, they have residential use around them. And very, very cognizant that they want to be good citizens. And this is part of the reason why they also wanted to be introducing themselves to the council. So we're here to answer any questions that you may have about our application, which will be submitted to the Board of License Commissioners probably in the next 30 to 40 days to make the next cycle. So they will be, it will be applied for in the month of April. And we're hopeful of getting a letter of support from the town council to say that they support us getting such a license. Without a beer, wine, and liquor license, restaurants are not competitive. And this is going to be an American bistro tablecloth restaurant. We submitted the menu to you all have so you can have an idea of what it is. And to be perfectly candid, this is the next edition of what we'll call more upscale dining in Riverdale Park. I think it's a reflection of how our community has arrived, that we can support these types of establishments. It says a lot about our community and the direction we're going in. So we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. I see that Councilmember Smith, and whose ward this restaurant will be opening, has a question. So go ahead, Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mayor Herman. First, thank you for bringing this to us. This looks like a would be a great value to the community to add another dining option, and just generally having a backfill for the Geppetto space, and one that is more consumer facing is exciting to me. I do have questions. I think probably more so for my colleagues on the council. I have not, to my knowledge, been involved with one of these competitive licensing processes before. So I guess my question is, how have we handled these in the past? And is there any reason why we would not want to assist with a letter of recommendation here?
Councilmember Lingua, I was racking my memory to see if we had done this in the past, and certainly not in the last 5 years, but I couldn't think of any previous to that time. Do you have any memories?
No, I don't. This is a rather unique request. So yeah. And I think it's all well and good that Mr. Herman is here before the council, and that he's representing this business before the council. It would have been nice seeing some of the owners here.
They are here.
Oh, they are.
They're with.
Oh, I'm
they're
sorry.
with Mr. Herman.
I introduced them earlier, and I'm sorry. They're sitting next to me where we're kind of tight. Can you see us?
Okay. Yes. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
I think, you know, it's nice that they are, and greetings, folks, and thank you for coming out. My apologies for the oversight. I think part of this is also not just coming before us and saying, hi, how are you? It's also going to those to your neighbors, those residential properties that are adjacent to you, and talking with them and reaching out to them, and sharing with them what you're looking to do, and this is something you may have already done.
Yeah, we've done that so many times.
Okay, well, I wasn't getting that impression with the presentation. It was just more, well, we're here before you and we'd like your blessing. And I think a lot of it is, I mean, for us, it's turning to those residents and saying, so what do you think? That's, for me, that's a lot of it. As I had mentioned earlier, it's when you have businesses that are in a location like this, tangential to, residences, and I don't just mean an apartment building, but folks who are in single family homes. having a very good, positive relationship with them and being very conscientious that you're in such a situation is important. Years ago, I was in a business. I worked at a business on Q Street, and across the street from us, row of townhomes. Right next to us, single-family detached home, and all around us on the other, across the intersecting streets, were all townhomes, and we were very conscientious of the fact that we were pretty much in a de facto residential community. Granted, Wisconsin Avenue was half a block away, but for the most part, we were in a residential community, and we made great strides to make sure that our property was kept up, that when it snowed, sidewalks were cleared, everything. We tried to do whatever we could to be good neighbors to these folks, and I hope that that's going to be your objective as well. I know currently in Ward 3 right now, we're having a contentious action with a business over there who a number of residents do not feel that they're being good neighbors. So that is one concern that I do have.
Councilman, if I could address a few of those points, and I'm sure my clients will chime in. We really appreciate you raising that. In fact, when I met with Dr. Makoso and Mel Amin initially about this, I said, I live in this community too, and I want you to understand that you have unique responsibilities. And they said, we are very conscious of the fact that where we're located, even though that a business has been run out of there before, where they were doing catering operations and the kitchen could be busy at various times, they recognize that this is a retail operation. And they said, we're very conscious of that. We want to make sure that we, don't do anything that's going to be upsetting to the community. We really want to do this, and we want this to be really successful and to become a place that they said that Riverdale Park would be very proud of. So I really appreciated their sentiments, but I told them that it was very important to be cognizant of this in terms of the control of people, the noise, and all the other stuff. And they said, that's why we really want to minimize any of the exterior stuff. We'll play it by ear, and then we'll talk about the phasing of expanding the outdoor dining, because we want to see how the experience is with the people that are behind us, which is a residential community. So they're very, very conscious of this, and it is a very long conversation we had even before I agreed to represent them related to the liquor license.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And of course, if there's anything that they need help on the town's end, I know staff is very capable of being able to help address any issues they have coming up, or else get them pointed in the right direction.
They've had frequent contact actually with town staff, as Patrick said. I feel like I know Jessica very well. So they've had a lot of contact, because also getting the carryout open first because of I'm sorry? And the carryout and the catering operation, right? Okay. Because what they're really trying to do is to get that started first. And the restaurant is they are doing the renovations, and to get that up to speed. It's going to look very nice on the inside, but it takes time to make it look that way. Yes, but they're trying to make now that they're paying rent into that location, and they want to make sure that they can start making some profitability, or at least some revenue, the generation from the property while they're paying rent. So they are been very actively involved with the town. Okay.
This might be a little far-reaching. I don't mean it to sound like counting chickens before they hatch. But it's in the spirit of being optimistic, and that business does prosper. One of the things I noticed about that location is that, you know, should they become prosperous, quite prosperous, and do well, the issue, you know, dealing with parking in that area could be a challenge to them being victims of their own success.
Well, let me address that on a couple levels, and I appreciate you raising that point. There's a lot of parking spaces up front that are available to them, and we anticipate that there will also be a fairly high pedestrian threshold. I mean, part of the reason of the location being there between the town center and the Route 1 corridor, there is a fair amount of pedestrian thoroughfare, and they're hopeful that it'll become a walk-to restaurant for many residents. But I also would indicate to you that we also are encouraging, as our town center development and looking at these business corridors that are the connecting corridors from the town center to Route 1 and also to the north, going up toward to Riverdale Park Station. We're trying to encourage as much of this activity, but we anticipate that there is other parking that's available. We also have across the street, we have a vacant business at the moment with Ernie's Lock that's vacant at the moment, and there are other parking, considerable parking for evening stuff that might be available at some of the other establishments that are basically a half a block away, if that becomes an issue. And I'm sure that they will entertain conversations with adjacent property owners if that becomes necessary to find spillover parking.
And then to
Go ahead, I'm
to
sorry.
even eventually have some kind of valley parking if with time we feel like we can lose any customer, we can provide the valley parking.
Okay, did you hear that, Councilman?
I did not hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got part of it, you know.
Yeah, what I was saying is, yeah, we thought about where to park if eventually in the future we'll have some problem with the parking. So we have a building across the street from Baltimore Avenue where we know a couple of people, owner that live in those areas. And then for that, we're thinking about doing some kind of valet parking when times come, if times come, and then we have more
It's
crime.
something that is needed.
Yeah, we can also implement a valet parking in a future.
Okay.
And that parking lot is enormous, so.
It is enormous, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Right. Okay. Well, that brings up some, I mean, not really related to this directly. And for another conversation that council needs to have to talk with SHA about improving that Queensbury Route 1 intersection, traffic light wise, but that's another conversation. So those are all the questions I had for now. Thank you.
Mayor, there was also a
Okay.
question that came up earlier. I don't know if about the precedence of this. Do you want me to address that, or?
Please do if you know of any history that I don't.
I don't know, when I was mayor and on the council, I don't believe that we had asked to opine on liquor licenses. I have represented a number of small businesses in municipalities before that have applied for liquor licenses, and we have appealed to in those particular instances the municipalities to seek support for the licenses. And most municipalities, actually in every case that I did where I had a municipality involved, they were more than happy to support it because they wanted the idea of a restaurant thing. I've never had to do this for like someone trying to get like, a liquor store or anything like that. That's not what we're doing here. So it is not without precedent that I've done this before personally in other municipalities, but this is the first time that I'm doing the liquor permit, liquor license for the beer, wine, liquor. I thought when I did Carboni Legna, I think I may have approached the town, but I'm not sure because I think that might be located. I'm not sure if that's actually located in the town limits. I think it is. And I know that there was discussions, but I'm not sure whether we actually came to the council for support.
I
We
know I don't
spoke-
remember anything like that, so.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, he
Mayor,
knows
Mayor
that.
Herman, one other thing I'd just like to mention is that you might talk to the owners of Riviera Tapas, because I think that they did go through some special process for their liquor license. And so it may be that there is some way to do that.
They're not eligible because their lines are drawn for certain districts in different ways. We are in a competitive process the same way that everybody else is, because we're not located in one of those exclusive receiving zones, which is Riviera Tapas was in one of those exclusive zones that they were able to get that without the competitive process. If this was not competitive, we would come to you anyway to introduce you to the restaurant, but we would not need your support per se for the application.
Okay. There's a couple of council members with questions. I think that Councilmember Inyang had his hand up first. I'll let him go first.
Well, thank you. Welcome. You know, I appreciate meeting you all and coming to the council. I think I'll say, you know, personally, I would support a letter of recommendation for a liquor license. I think for you know, for restaurants, it's sort of kind of pivotal. And so it's a competitive process. Obviously, it's not a guarantee, but if we could do anything, I think it'd be worthwhile doing to try and help this new restaurant opening up. Definitely excited about it and looking forward to it. You know, my wife was asking about like you know, I looked at the menu and I definitely you mentioned American fare. I see a lot of sort of West African staples in there. You know, I'm Nigerian, she's from Ghana, so we're curious about if there's jollof rice on the menu. We can think about that. If not, I would encourage that you do add some in there.
We will do. You add it.
Okay,
We'll
I
put a dish
appreciate it.
on there in your honor.
You can name it after me if you want. That's perfectly fine too.
While we're at it, I like ice cream and cupcakes.
Also remember what they named that, the Del Barton Delight?
We'll figure out the naming rights, you know, at a later time. But I think ultimately, you know, excited about it. I think in our community we have a lot of quick bites, right? And I always think about we're so close to the University of Maryland. When Parents Weekend, homecoming comes in, like how many places can sort of the community go and take a person to have a nice lunch or dinner. If they wanted to sort of upscale it. I know there's not as many establishments like that. And so I definitely think there's an opportunity here in the market forward and would you know, look forward to helping, you know, if anything we can do to sort of help. I think it'd be important and just keep us in the loop to see what's necessary and if there's a grand opening or anything like that, you know, I'm sure the mayor would love to cut a ribbon in front of the establishment whenever that's possible.
Appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Inyang. Councilmember Smith, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first question or additional question I have is just is this something that we can put on the consent agenda for the next legislative meeting, or is it something that doesn't even rise to that level? But separately, and to Councilman Lingua's point, I'm wondering if hopefully this is not the last time we have to go through these, and it sounds like the applicants here in question have done a great job working with the community, but I'm wondering if there's something we should put in place you know, that would ensure that future applicants, when they come to request something like this from us, that we've ensured that before we consider it, that they have spoken with their neighbors and ensured that everybody agrees that you know, or at least that they've been informed, right? Maybe there's not agreement there, but I think that's something that we should discuss for separate future projects. But otherwise, I think I'm comfortable with moving forward with this as expeditiously as possible to help get this thing off the ground.
Thank you.
Mr. Town Manager, go ahead.
Yes, in response to Councilmember Smith's recommendation, town staff have on our list to do to reach out to College Park, because we understand that the city of College Park has a process, and that way, when businesses are coming, they know what to ask for, they know what to expect, and I believe as part of that process, the city of College Park actually reports back to the Board of License Commissioners annually concerns they have about the operations of licensees within their jurisdiction. So if it pleases the council, we'll be happy to further research that and bring that back as a process maybe at the end of April. It won't help for this immediate one, but it would provide the council with a potential framework, and I think that's supporting the business community as well.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any additional council questions for the business owners or Mayor Herman? Any public comments? Okay, I will just say that I also carefully read through the menu and got hungry just looking at the list. So I'm hoping that your best of success with the liquor board, and it sounds like we will be moving forward with this. Councilmember Smith, I will reach out to you over the next couple of days about how this will appear on the agenda for next week, and we can determine that. But I think we understand the work that the owners have put into reaching out to the community. Just one quick technical question. I just remembered this. You show trash bins as being in the, if I got my directions correct, far southeast corner behind the catering and carry-out location. Are those going to be regular trash cans, or is it going to be a dumpster back there?
No, it's going to be regular trash can. I'm sorry? No, I think, no, it has to be a dumpster.
Yeah, it would have to be a screen dumpster, whatever. The site plan that you have, or the proposed architectural site plan, and I mean, this is the earliest iteration of it, it's not, everything's not finished.
Right.
I asked them primarily to make sure that the architect gave the restaurant design. I thought that was most important. But if you move the map, I guess, or the site plan up, and you'll see behind the other building. If my memory serves me correct, yep, you just passed it. Stop.
Okay, right
So
there.
that corner there.
If my memory serves me correctly, when Geppetto's Catering was operating, I think that's actually the configuration that they had as well. They also had vehicles that would park back there because they had their catering trucks often behind the fence line, because they were loading from the rear loading docks often when they were putting catering in. But is there a specific question related to that?
Yeah, the only issue is just that very often when we have conflicts between residential adjacent to restaurants, then it's about the dumpsters. And so if there's some other place that it could be put that was a little bit further from the houses, that might be better. Just consider that. And also one of the I know that residents on the other side of Baltimore Avenue have had problems with the dumpsters being emptied at 5 or 5:30 in the morning. And so if you could possibly arrange with whoever's picking it up, not have the sound of a large dumpster being lifted and shaken by the trucks at that early time of day would be very nice.
Thank you. All of those considerations we made, and we will also be naming the dishes. I think you've all been to Chicken Ruth's in Annapolis, where they have the different sandwiches named after different elected officials. So apparently the menu here is going to have some unusual nomenclature
based on the meeting tonight.
Of course, of course.
Well,
Mr. Mayor?
We may have to consult
I'll
with our
take it
ethics
fast.
commission on that, so.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was just getting a little sweaty here, and I saw Mr. Lecition doing the same. I want to be clear that approval is in no way contingent upon the naming conditions.
We understand very clearly, yes.
Okay, well, thank you for the presentation, and I will let you know what Councilmember Smith and I just determined for the placement on the agenda for next week, Mr. Herman.
Thank you. Would
Thank
we
you
need,
so much.
would I need to, folks to be there next week? Would you want us there, or is that not necessary?
Councilmember Smith, do you think you'll need their attendance?
Well, I don't know what you and I are going to talk about, but my first thought is that that shouldn't be necessary, assuming I mean, I think we've talked it through here well enough.
I think just as that happens sometimes with fence permits, if we reach out to the neighbors and they're in support, then it'll probably go on the consent agenda and we won't need to have you there next week. So assuming that that's going to be the way it goes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your investment in our community. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next discussion item number 5 is minutes. I should just have a written statement that I can put up that says, check the minutes, because you're going down in history this way. So please check the minutes. That brings us to unfinished business. First one is review of revised vision and commitment statement for best practices, technology, and data. And I had only one one comment myself. Do other members of the council wish to go ahead first, or should I go ahead and dive in with my comment? I don't see any microphones opening up.
You can jump in.
Okay.
Go for it.
So the only comment I had, I thought it was the additions and tweaks were fantastic, and it meets my requirement. But riffing on an earlier discussion in the discussion of AI, then I think we should add equity into that list of E's also. And so with that addition to that one word, then that's my only comment on this one. So any additional council comments besides that one?
There went my comment, so.
Okay. So does this mean we're ready to vote on it next week?
Just from my clarification, you have a particular place in mind that you wanted to add in the equity part?
Well, there's a whole line of E's, and no, I don't have a particular place that it would fit. I assume there might be some rhythm that that equity would fit in as a 3-syllable rather than as a 2-syllable in other places. But you know, I don't have a particular place. Do you have a suggestion?
No, I think it's, I think for me, I think my last comment was always around how AI should be sort of explicitly called out, and how I believe firmly that it is the technology of the future. And so responsible AI or ethical, if you want to use that instead, as it whoever's penning this has a certain flair for words. I won't overprescribe what best to do it, but I think the idea of just, responsible AI or ethical AI in terms of just how we're prioritizing and including that towards our vision in the future, I think is important for me.
Agreed. I mean, there's been some issues with certain AIs that have produced results that are non-ideal, and I think that the staff was trying to cover that with the 5 E's, and I think adding the 6th would help out. But I think adding the word responsible before or a similar word before the AI might be worthwhile.
Agreed.
Okay, going once. Anybody else have comments? Any members of the public have comments? Councilmember Lingua, your microphone is not on. Do you have a comment?
You are so observant. Well, during this, in terms of a suggestion on where we're to bring up concept of the principle of equity, possibly the insertion of the word equitable in the fifth whereas. It states, whereas technology is continuously changing and improving, the town is dedicated to the use of technology to provide ethical, efficient, effective,
and equitable
municipal service. Find so to meet or exceed expectations of residents, business, visitors. Somewhere in there, equitable could work. I think the other one was the ninth whereas, whereas town staff are charged with operationalizing, wow, that's a lot of syllables, the mayor and council's vision as delineated specifically in adopted statements related to housing and neighborhoods, sustainability, business and economic development, infrastructure, arts and recreation, community engagement and transparency. Somewhere in there, I mean, we were looking at earlier the vision and commitment statement regarding diversity and equity. I think possibly in there is another place we could bring up, present that concept. So present that. It's not a concept, it's a commitment. So pardon me for the loose use of terms. But those are my two suggestions. It's possible places.
Okay.
I would ask, do the other council members feel that's those are reasonable suggestions?
Yeah. No, I mean, it sort of parallelizes the various whereases, so I agree with that.
That's fine by me.
Okay.
Operationalizing, now that you've read it, does seem like a mouthful there. So maybe if staff could look at that word and see if there's another one that might work.
What
a little bit
will
shorter
not
word.
you in Scrabble?
Okay, so I think these are pretty minor changes. So hopefully we can vote to adopt next Monday with these changes. Okay, next item. Well, are there any public comments on this item? Any suggestions from the public? Okay. Let's move on under unfinished business for the Walk Bike Drive Safety Initiative Speed Automated Enforcement Residential Zone.
Acting Chief Turner, can you walk us through this?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. No action is requested this evening work session. Instead, staff are seeking an opportunity to continue the discussion with the mayor and council on proposed changes to the Town Code Chapter 64 to allow for residential enforcement districts. As discussed in the March 4th legislative meeting, Town Code 64-20 school zones established designates the school zones for speed monitoring as defined in Chapter 64-21 school zone speed monitoring systems. Authorized state law permits speed monitoring in school zones only Monday through Friday during school hours. To ensure the health, safety, welfare, and residents, as well as visitors to the town, staff recommend that the council amend the town code to include residential enforcement districts where applicable. To change the residential enforcement district would allow for automated speed enforcement to occur every day at all times. While current speed monitoring programs may serve effectively during weekday school hours, it does not allow for enforcement in later evening hours, at night, early morning hours, or on weekends. This change would support the town's vision and commitment to transportation, as well as the walk, bike, drive safety initiative through modifying driver behavior 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Several neighboring jurisdictions such as College Park, Bowie, Cheverly, and the town of Edmiston have already adopted residential enforcement district approach to improve safety. The proposed change to residential enforcement districts would not affect River Tech Court, which would remain a school zone because it is a non-residential. Furthermore, at this time, staff are not requesting additional automated enforcement camera locations. Staff is available to answer questions at tonight's work session from the mayor and council and the public.
Thank you, Chief Turner. Council first, any questions for Chief Turner?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Lingua, go ahead.
Acting Chief Turner, welcome. Always good to see you. And thank you for this presentation. My one question for you, regarding that last point when you're talking about River Tech Court, while it is a non-residential area, what we do have there is we put in a substantial effort to put bike lanes in, both for the safety of students going to and from the school there, as well as part of an encouragement on the walk, bike, drive initiative. And in future years, with the eventual completion of the Purple Line and the development that is occurring up at the College Park Metro, being able to have fluid movement by all three means, be that walking, be that on a bicycle or motor vehicle, having similar type enforcement that we'd have in residential areas would seem to be appropriate. Any thoughts on that?
Yes. So the town manager and I have discussed there is an option because because the University of Maryland property and the higher learning there that we will look at maybe doing what College Park did with the University of Maryland because their property adjoins that roadway, that we maybe look at changing to that type of enforcement, which would allow for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay. Well, I mean, while it might be University of Maryland's property, it is our road. It's the way I'm seeing it, and I'm also seeing the fact that Ken Ullman was here a number of months ago, saying that he fully support and understand and be behind not only our vision and commitment statements, but our public initiatives as well. And I have a feeling Mr. Ullman would like to be a very good neighbor with the town on behalf of the University of Maryland. That's my thinking. I could be wrong. But
Well,
I think it's worth a conversation.
Yes, sir. So the law as it is now with the school's residential enforcement, we have to have a certain percentage of residents that border the roadway, and they have to be within 300 feet of the roadway. That's why we were looking at a different option because of the higher learning aspect.
Okay, well, I think if we could find that different option, I think also so are there, I don't want to use the term exceptions, but I was thinking more of the term allowances, variations, qualifications for when you're looking at a roadway, thoroughfare, whatever you want to call it, that is essentially multimodal, and connecting, is a connection point between two major areas. And what I'm thinking about here is the Discovery District, Purple Line Transit Stop is, both in Riverdale Park as well as the College Park Metro stop. The fact that that roadway also leads up to the development we have now at Riverdale Park Station, as well as leading to our town center. Is there any precedent for those type of considerations?
Not in the current law.
Okay. Not in the current laws.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Ranyang, your hand is up.
Yes, I think it's good to hear that there may be some because I'm not exactly sure what it means, but if there's another way to think about to maybe get a longer enforcement on River Tech Road, I think that'd be definitely all for it. Yeah, I know when you presented earlier this month some of the data in terms of there are more people who are speeding on non-enforcement hours than during enforcement hours. And so I think that's probably, I'm not sure if that's learned behavior of, I guess, the cameras seem to be off at these particular times. And so I think, the goal is not necessarily to increase speed revenue, is to just stop speeding. So, if we can get it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not just, business hours during school year, like the school months, I think that'd be a benefit for everyone in town. And I do have a question in terms of, does this change the calculus in terms of where future cameras could be located? I know it's not something that you're requesting now, but I was always under the impression that the current camera locations were sort of tied to school zones. Is that no longer the case if we go to this new enforcement designation?
That's correct. We would be able to do speed monitoring on every town street roadway.
Okay.
And if I can ask a clarifying question on that. Rob, would that be on every town street that the mayor and council authorize for this to be? It's not that staff would just do this. It would be, we would have to designate spots like we currently do?
That's correct, as well as the signage and a warning period.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. So essentially it would be the same, is it safe to assume the same rigor that goes into sort of currently placing signs in school districts, school zones now would apply moving forward, just the idea that it won't necessarily have to be tied to the proximity to a school like it is now?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional council questions or comment for Chief Turner? Okay, I think all of my questions have already been asked and answered. So are there any public comments or questions? I would say to Mr. Town Manager and the staff that I think my sense of the council is that they are interested in moving forward in this direction. And so please start that process unless anyone wants to object. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would just, for the record, if nothing else, note my extreme reluctance in matters related to automatic enforcement. I don't think that I think the remainder of the council is pretty clear, and I don't know that my opinions are gonna slow things down any at all, and I won't seek to do so.
To
But
speak.
yeah, fair. That was not even on purpose. But yeah, I'm not seeking to hold this up, but would note that for the record.
Okay, thank you, and I will note just as an aside that Delegate Love from Montgomery County has several bills in play. I'm not sure of their status. That would have substantial fines for people misusing data from speed cameras and other automated enforcement. So as I said, I don't know the status of that, but I think it's sort of $1,000 or $2,000 fine if someone uses the photographs or the data collected in any inappropriate way. So she is at least working in that direction. Okay, if there's no more discussion of that, then let's move on to the curbside reservations program, unfinished business item 3.
Director Shelton, if you could walk us through this, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. As a reminder, the Curbside Reservations Program is a program designed to support local businesses. The staff was encouraged to create this program after recognizing that businesses in Riverdale Park Station were reserving parking spaces adjacent to their businesses for curbside pickup. Previously, those businesses had an agreement with the prior owners of those roadways and streets. And now this program suggests that we create a new pathway for them to enter into agreement with the town to continue these programs and allow them to reserve space for curbside pickup. There were a few updates based on the conversation, both with the town attorney and in the last conversation with the mayor and council. The conversation with the attorney and the town attorney suggested that we remove the insurance requirement. He suggested that would not be required, or it would not be. He suggested that we should not require that, basically. And in response to the feedback to the mayor and council during the February work session meeting, the program will now limit the reservation of curbside spaces to 1 space per business. This is to keep the number of spaces that are reserved from getting out of hand. Initially, we were trying to strike a balance by allowing some businesses to reserve spaces in front of vacant property, but quickly realized that would become very complicated and a bit of a mess in the long term. So based on the suggestion of the mayor and council, we've revised the program to now limit the reservations of curbside spaces to 1 space per business. And the last item that was updated in the program was the enforcement process. Previously, we had citations and other penalties for not adhering to the guidelines of the program. And now if a participating business violates the guidelines, then their sign is removed and the agreement is terminated. And the space is no longer going to be used for curbside pickup. If there are any questions about the program, I'd be happy to answer them.
Council, any questions?
Sounds great. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. Is there I think this is a good compromise. Assuming that since these are going to be spaces in actual like parking spots, right? And so for like Burton's, where I think their curbside during the pandemic was in a bike lane, their spot would be what I guess along 45th Avenue, like next to I guess that would be probably like around District Taco would be my guess.
Yes, I think it's just south of the District Taco parking spaces there. One of the requirements is that it is indeed a parking space and not a bike lane.
Perfect.
Yes.
And then will there be like enforcement in terms of like how long a person is parked there, or has there been any thought in terms of I think right now there's signage right now for certain businesses. I think people just end up just parking there normally. Is this something that like, is there a time limit in terms of like how long the spot could be? Anything that's been discussed like that?
Not yet, no. Typically, from conversations with the businesses, typically whoever parks in the curbside pickup spaces are not planning on staying there very long. At least if that's their true intention, is to use it as a curbside pickup location. And so that was not a primary concern for them, is how long somebody would stay there, as long as they're using it as intended.
Okay. And is there any other place besides in Riverdale Park Station that this program would be applicable for?
We're still reviewing that, and the guidelines don't specifically call out Riverdale Park Station. It's more of a town-wide grant program. So if there were other similar requests from businesses, they would be eligible as well, as long as they met the guideline requirements.
So there might be some in town center, for instance.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Additional council questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? So I'm going to sort of lean in on Councilmember Inyang's comment about enforcement, that I think we do need to think about that a little bit, that limiting it to, 15 minutes of parking, because that's about how long it takes, at the longest that it could take for people getting in and out. And it would allow us to enforce if somebody decided to park there and go watch a movie or something. And so just something to think about, that we would want to do that. I have seen in the electric vehicle parking spaces, I've seen a lot of non-electric vehicles parking in those and blocking access. And so people do, when they're desperate for a parking spot, they'll just take one. And so some way to enforce it, I think, would be a good idea. Another little detail is that I think we should try to figure out, and it may complicate it too much, but try to figure out a way to limit these spaces being reserved to only when the restaurants are open. So if they're, open Monday through Friday from noon till 9 p.m. or 11 a.m. till 9 p.m., then somebody else should be able to park in there from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. because it's not being used by the restaurant during that time. This could be complicated because a lot of restaurants have different schedules and so on, but it's just something that would be nice to think about if we manage to make that work. And I think that those are the only two comments I have on this.
You can certainly add a time limit and a reference to restaurant hours as well to the guidelines.
And it may be that we have to, have the restaurants place signage that says what their hours of operation are, and to ensure that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments from anyone here?
Yeah, I look forward to the voting on it whenever it's ready.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Last item on unfinished business, Riverdale Park Community and Municipal Center Project Update, 6601 Baltimore Avenue. Both the town manager and I spoke with Ethan Sweep and Congressman Ivey's office, and they are moving at a accelerated path compared to what they have been for the last few months. They seem to have a plan in place for doing this and are working with the remainder of the delegation. So before I turn to Councilmember Smith, Mr. Town Manager, do you have any additional comments to make?
Just that I've been in contact with the GSA surplus property director. Again, we exchanged emails just yesterday. And so he's going to keep the town apprised of any movement on their side.
Okay.
He's still waiting for some direction from the Army Reserve. But if he receives that in the interim, then they would have to begin the normal process. But with the understanding that we have this parallel line going. And so we will stay in close contact with GSA until it's resolved.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering if there would be any value in a more resident focused effort to inform or highlight our desire to better the community and surrounding communities with this project, or if that would be what's the word, that kind of agitation would not be helpful when we have some folks working on our side. If it would be helpful, I have some personal experience in that work and can assist, but I'm sure my colleague from Ward 4 can agree, and some experience was with having resident focused retail politics efforts on things that are already being worked on can sometimes get folks a little frustrated. But yeah, that would be my question, is if that's something we should be encouraging our residents to do.
Based on my recent conversation with former Mayor Sweep, who is mayor of Berwyn Heights, he has said that this is a priority for the congressman's office, and so I don't think any additional pressure is needed.
Yeah, I don't doubt that it is from the congressman, but there are other people on those committees that need to weigh in, and we'll have a vote on this. And I'm wondering if those are folks that should hear from our community. And that may not be something that we can decide tonight, but just throwing it out there.
Okay, I will, next time I speak with Mr. Sweep, then I will check into that. Mr. Town Manager, I'm gonna go with Councilmember Inyang. That's okay. Councilmember Inyang, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I definitely agree with my colleague. More so, at least for myself, we definitely, if things are looking positive behind the scenes, let us not break ourselves into jail by trying to do something. But I will say that if there is sort of the need for maybe something long term, it may not necessarily have to be an event, but if it's a letter campaign or signatures or getting interviews from folks, I do think that there's an opportunity to get the resident perspective, and not just, we want these buildings, but sort of we see this tied to our vision. We see this tied to solving a lot of the sort of core issues around stormwater management that we've talked about. I think that's something that we should definitely try to capture in some way. And if it helps to do it sort of early on as a way to, build momentum, or after the fact as a way to continue the drumbeat around this, I think would be super important. So just, let us know how we can help. And I think we'll be ready to chip in. And then I guess my last question, since the town manager is probably going to speak after me, is at this moment, do we know if any other entity is interested in the property that we know of? Has that changed at all? Is it still just us, or are we still sort of waiting for the potential other shoe to drop?
As far as I know, we're the only ones who are actively inquiring about it right now. So unless the town manager has a different idea.
No, I believe it's just us.
Okay. And Mr. Town Manager, did you want to have any additional comment, or?
Not this evening, sir.
Okay. Okay. I think that I sort of feel like at the moment, we should just wait and see. If you are talking to people and say that if they interact with the congressman in some way, if they pass on that they've heard that he's working on it and they're very appreciative, that would be an okay thing to do. I think that, I think he knows that the community is interested, and as I said, they're working very hard on it. So I think we should work that way. Okay, any additional questions, comments about the Riverdale Park Community and Municipal Center project? Council or members of the public? Okay, hearing none. Are there any items of new business? Going once, going twice? Okay, we are done and it's been a pleasant evening working with all of
Yes,
you.
I guess you didn't see me release my mic.
I did not. You have an item of new business. Go ahead.
Something for future consideration. Doesn't have to, we don't have to get into a big discussion about it tonight. But being that we're actively looking to augment our walk, bike, drive initiative, and this may not be music to acting Chief Turner's ear, because I remember us having this conversation many a year ago. I can't remember who was president at the time, but looking and addressing parking within the town, and I believe that's chapter 64. I've been hearing from a number of folks regarding not just in Ward 3, but around town about some of the parking they're seeing at stop signs, right up to and at curbs, at curb corners and all. So I think in the coming work sessions, may want to be an item to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we could add to that conversation, I know we've talked about permit parking, and I know we talked earlier today about something that sort of might make permit parking easier. I forget what it is, but I know in the Riverdale Park Station sort of community, it's been something that's, been talked about for years, and then road turnover was always like the big issue. And then so now that that's done, I've been asked, what is the process? Is it something where like X amount of signatures sort of bring it up? Do I need to sort of formally make an approval process? So just would love to know what the process is, and I can help. Would love to be able to start that process going for sure.
Mr. Town Manager?
Councilmember Yang, we'll get that information to you on what the process is. And then, Mr. Mayor, staff have some ideas about parking in addition to what we're hearing from the council tonight. So we can prepare kind of a comprehensive discussion on parking for the next work session.
Okay, very good. Any additional? Go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is new business. I know we talked that we had we did the staff did the research on sort of mayor and council salaries, and we had a good spirited conversation, and we kind of dropped it. I would want to sort of revisit that. I think it's still a worthwhile conversation to have. I think there were still some undecided things in terms of how do we sort of tie it to some type of, whether it's inflation rate, something to sort of set it so that it's not something that goes another 12 to 14 years without being touched, as well as, and then, something that we feel comfortable with. And so would that be new unfinished business or new business, since we talked about it before?
That would be unfinished business, but
Okay.
I think that the idea at this point is, if you want to introduce something, then please reach out to staff and sort of say what you might want to introduce, or we can bring it up and discuss it at a future work session if you don't have firm ideas.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional items anybody wants to discuss tonight? Okay, we're just before 10 o'clock, so let's get out of our little virtual room here, and I'm going to go and have some dinner myself. I'm going to try to look up what those fries you mentioned, Councilmember Yang. That sound not for dinner tonight. They sound good.
Yeah, no, it's jollof rice, all that stuff. It's good. It's good stuff. We'll see.
Okay, very good.
Thank
Good night,
you all.
everyone.
Take care.